Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Ascendis Masterminds for Managers webinar. I'm Lauren Young of Freshly Baked Communications, and today I'll be moderating a webinar that is part of a series of interactive experiences with a trusted industry expert and a good friend of mine on the topic of virtual learning and equipping mobile workers in these virtual teams. This expert was carefully selected to provide innovative insights that will help you improve your organization's productivity with a mobile workforce and learn how to achieve success in a virtual world. Our topic is bridging the perceived distance, equipping mobile workers in virtual teams. And Lee Johnson, principal and founder of Partners in Development, will lead our discussion this morning. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you, Lauren, and welcome to everyone else. We're excited to have you join us today and very excited to share with you information we have about virtual teams and what's happening in the mobile workforce today.
Absolutely. So if you are new or haven't joined the Ascendis Masterminds for Managers before, you will know that these are being brought to you by the Chicago-based firm Ascendis Learning Connection, which was founded by learning management expert Sue Drake, who is also on the call today. So our goal is to provide you with these timely presentations that can be expanded into customized learning modules for your organization. And in turn, we hope that you can use this information to build supplemental partnerships for your organization and generate new growth and progress. So these Masterminds for Managers webinar series gives you the opportunity to do three things. The first is to meet a subject matter expert who can potentially help to solve a business challenge that you may be facing within your organization. Second, we'd like you to experience firsthand a possible solution for your organization. So you have the opportunity to test the waters with this individual expert before recommending the option to work with him or her internally. And then finally, you can see our expert in action to ensure that he or she is a good fit for your organization in terms of their style, personality, and their approach. So just a few housekeeping rules before we begin. You may notice that you're not able to talk directly to Lee and I. Everyone's phones are on mute to eliminate background noise during the conference. Also, I have been asked, are you able to join the webinar with a headset? We try to make sure everybody dials in, so if you do need the dial-in number, please let me know in the chat field. I'm happy to send it to you. You will have an opportunity to ask questions with our experts throughout the webinar and at the very end. So in the meantime, if you do have a question or any comments for Lee or I during this presentation, you can participate by using the chat feature, which you can find at the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And like I mentioned, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where Lee will be happy to answer as many questions as he can during our allotted time. So here's what's playing in today's webinar. We will start off with our challenge of the day, followed by our world-famous Test the Water segment that allows you to test drive a sample consulting engagement with Lee. And then finally, we will wrap up today's presentation with the What's the Buzz segment. So we would love to get your feedback and answer any questions that you may have. All right. And we have our internationally acclaimed game that we invite you to play during the webinar. This is called our Term of the Day. So during each webinar this year, we unveil a new term, Wheel of Fortune style, as you can see here. So the first person who can submit the correct answer in the chat field will win 2 entries in our end of the year drawing for a complimentary training facilitated by one of our fabulous Ascendis experts. So these are the blanks. Don't worry if you can't guess what the term is yet. We will flash the slide again with more letters filled in during today's webinar, so best of luck to you. Also, if you're just listening in, you can submit your questions via Twitter at DrakeAscendis. And be sure to use the hashtag AscendisMM. So once again, if you're listening only and not viewing the live webinar, this is a great way for you to stay included in our conversation this morning. So to give you just a few more details on your host this morning, I serve as the CEO and founder of Freshly Baked Communications, which is a brand marketing strategy and content writing firm. I'm also a 4-time award-winning author, and I travel worldwide to speak about how to successfully market a small business on an even smaller budget. So Lee and I are friends. We've known each other for quite a while now. And I love hearing his stories about his travels across the world to teach virtual leadership. So, Lee, one question I've never asked you is, what is the most unusual food you've tried when you travel abroad?
Well, that is an interesting question. In 2014, I spent 5.5 months in Saudi Arabia, and one of the things that occurred there was different students that I had would bring things to the class on Thursdays for lunch. And one of the things that we had that day, which is probably the most unusual thing I've eaten so far, are camel liver wraps.
Oh my goodness.
I'm told that they're good for health. I would describe them more along the lines of beef liver, but a little gamier.
Oh, wow. Wow. Would you eat it again?
It wouldn't be my first choice, but I wouldn't turn it down in deference to being courteous and showing respect for my host.
Absolutely. Very cool. All right, one more question before we begin. What is the most surprising challenge of being a virtual team leader, in your opinion?
You know, I think that one of the things that's most surprising to me is how much more challenging it is to communicate and reach a common understanding. Too often we tend to assume that we have the same understanding about an issue as the other person or parties that we're talking with, and many times we don't. Today I'm going to talk about making the implicit explicit and why that's so important. So reaching a common understanding in communicating in absence of face-to-face communication, I think, is one of the most surprising challenges.
Very well stated. All right, as Lee begins, I would like to let you know that he has a very special giveaway for everyone on the call today at the end. So be sure to pay very close attention to the information he's about to share. Take it away, Lee.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and you'll soon be hearing about our challenge of the day moment in a little while. You know, I've been both a member and a leader of virtual teams in addition to researching and teaching about them. And I'm optimistic about their potential to dramatically change not only the way that business is done globally, but in the opportunities it offers us to build multinational relationships and bonds. And that's one of the reasons that I'm very happy to be here with you today virtually as we explore what some of those opportunities and challenges are of virtual teams. Sometimes the question comes up, why a mobile workforce? And you're going to hear me use the terms virtual teams, mobile workforces, globally dispersed workforces. The end result is that today, many of us in the working world face a number of these changes. In fact, I would guess that there's no one on this call who's not been impacted by these changes in the world. And it's this context in which we as team members and leaders find ourselves as we do our best to accomplish the goals of our organization and, in fact, the goals of our personal lives. So let me start with a couple of quick definitions so that I'm clear on my language. Here's a definition of a virtual team. Virtual team members could include those who work on-site in offices, members who work from home. It could be mobile workers on campus, or even those road warriors who are seldom in any one place for any length of time. And more, we're also hearing the term hybrid teams. This is a term that was used to describe teams that are a combination of in-office and remote workers. What I tell folks is let's not get too hung up on the terminology. What I think is far more interesting are the dynamics that come into play among the changes in the world, the changes in the way that work gets done today, and the impact that it has. So let's learn a little bit more about you. We've created a survey based on some information that I think would be helpful to know about this group. So this is our first poll, and give us a check in what most describes your role, either in leading a virtual team, having remote employees, or none of those at this point.
All right, thanks, Lee. So everybody feel free. I see you're starting to jump in and vote for the one that best describes you. I'll give you 5 more seconds to participate. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's skip to the results. And Lee, what do you see on your end?
Well, it looks like about a third of the people today are leading a virtual team. Nearly 20% have remote employees, and almost a third of the group leads a virtual team and employees. So one is leading a virtual team, the other one is leading a virtual team and employees. And then there's almost, not quite 20%, who aren't yet leading a virtual team or who are not members of virtual teams yet. But I suspect that that's going to be changing before too long.
Sure.
So some interesting information. Let's go to our next poll, which is, are you currently a mobile worker or a member of a virtual team? So the earlier question was a leader of a virtual team. Now let's see how many of you are members or both, perhaps.
All right. So jump on in again. Don't be scared. I'll give you about 5 more seconds here. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm closing the poll, and let's see what the results are.
Okay, about 5%, a little over 5%, consider themselves mobile workers. Nearly 45% say that they're virtual team members, and 50% are saying that they're both virtual team members as well as mobile workers, and almost 20% saying not there yet. So let's go to the next poll, one more before we get into the information. For those of you who are associated with virtual teams or mobile workers, is your team national, or are you working with members from other countries as well?
Okay. So these are coming in pretty fast now. I think everyone's got the hang of it.
All right.
5 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. All right. To the results.
Okay. Well, 2/3 of this group is working with teams nationally based in the U.S., and about a third are working with international teams. So we're going to talk about things relative to both of these types of teams. What I'd like to share with you today are what are some of the key differences between face-to-face teams or on-site teams and virtual teams. And then I'm also going to share with you what I call ways in which you can bridge the perceived distance among members. But before we do that, here is your first clues for our term of the day.
All right. So everybody study your screens. Make a couple of notes if you need to. Once again, we'll keep unveiling letters throughout the presentation, and the term is something related to what Lee is going to introduce, so that's a hint. So if you're paying attention, you'll probably be able to guess this pretty quickly. And once again, the first person to submit the correct answer in the chat field will win those 2 entries in our end-of-the-year drawing for the complimentary training facilitated by one of the Ascendis experts. So you could pick Lee, you could pick one of the other experts as well. So best of luck to you. And now we're going to go ahead and move over to test the waters. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is when you have an opportunity to test drive a consulting engagement with Lee. All right, back to Lee.
Thank you, Lauren. Take a look at what some of the differences are between on-site teams and global virtual teams. I wonder how many of these have affected you in your work. And to do that, I'm going to ask you to click on the little arrow next to your name over in the upper left-hand corner and just raise your hand to give us an indication of whether or not, if you've been affected by some of these changes, go ahead and raise your hand.
All right. Seems like everybody is lighting up with their hand raised. That's pretty good.
I see that. So these are things that are happening all across our work lives, and they impact how we work with others and how we achieve results with others. Let me share with you that there are 4 key factors that differentiate co-located teams, or those teams that are located, whose members are located physically on the same floor and within the same general area. What are the differences between those teams and from dispersed teams? These 4 factors are geography, technology, culture, and time, and they have a huge impact on team members' ability to build trusting, positive relationships, and their ability to align themselves behind the team's purpose and vision. And these 4 factors, are critical to high performance of virtual teams. Let's take a look at what some of the differences are between virtual and face-to-face teams. In some research that was done by RW3 Culture Wizard, here's what some respondents said were major challenges when it came to managing conflict, making decisions, expressing opinions, delivering quality output, and generating innovative ideas. And again, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you've experienced some of these challenges in your work with virtual teams.
Okay.
And again,
Just
we're
a few
seeing
less, yeah.
a number of hands raised, so that many of you have also experienced this. Here's some research, some additional research from MIT Sloan related to the impact of physical distance on team performance. Take a look at the impact of distance as it grows from team members who are on the same floor to those who are located on different continents. When we're talking about effectiveness, we're looking at product quality, reliability, and customer satisfaction. When we're looking at efficiency, we're looking at adherence to budget and schedule restraints. Here's the main point. Small distances matter. Team members who are in the same building but on different floors many times did not consider themselves as being dispersed, and they oftentimes underestimate the barriers to collaboration simply from having to climb a set of stairs to meet face-to-face. Think about what collaboration barriers you might observe among your team members and leaders. So the question becomes what's a virtual team member to do? And at Partners Development, we work at creating tools and resources to assist leaders and team members to navigate that whitewater of virtual teamwork, as well as provide development experiences to help them succeed. So we've talked about what some of the factors are that influence virtual work and some of the challenges that mobile workers face. What I want to share with you are ways that successful mobile team members deal with them and bridge the perceived distance. We're going to look at 5 strategies very quickly for how you can create some of those bridges. So let's look at the first strategy. The first strategy begins with B, and that represents build relationships. Building relationships with your manager and other team members is essential. And high trust in particular is a critical ingredient to all teams, and it's more difficult to develop high trust in the absence of face-to-face communication. Let me tell you a little bit about trust and how you can develop it in a virtual world. There are 2 types of trust, cognitive and emotional. Cognitive is trust that's based on rational or calculated assessments. It's based on one's perceived integrity and ability. It's about, as I said, the rational part of our brain that says, this is a person who can be trusted to provide what they've committed to. So for example, if Lauren and I are on a team together and my experience with her is that she has expertise in her area, she follows through on her commitments and is collaborative, I'll extend her my trust, but within limits. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. Here are what I call the 4 C's of building cognitive trust. Credibility means that people perceive you as having expertise to deliver what's needed. People trust your judgment and your knowledge. Consistency is represented when you're perceived as reliable and that you walk your talk and can be counted on to behave as expected. Remember, trust is about perception. It's not whether or not we perceive ourselves as trustworthy, it's do others perceive us as trustworthy. Communication is related to the perception by others that you're open to their ideas and their concerns. People trust you to give them timely feedback, and that you're also willing to receive feedback. And consideration, the fourth C, is about people believing that you care about them and that you're willing to look out for their interests even if they're not present. These four C's will go a long way in building trust with others, but that's only part of the equation. Emotional trust is trust that results from the social bonds developed in a relationship where there's genuine care and concern for the welfare of another person, and it's based on assessments of benevolence. It generally occurs after one has earned some cognitive trust. Emotional trust is that product of the bonds that come when people sense that others care about them. And it's crucial for long-term productive relationships. Team members who demonstrate high levels of emotional intelligence will reach higher levels of performance than their counterparts. And remember, people don't follow people they don't trust. How many of you are already familiar with emotional intelligence? Give me a little up arrow, if you will, to let me know whether or not, a hands up, if you are already familiar with emotional intelligence. Okay, we have some who are. There's a lot of good research on emotional intelligence, and it's essential for us to be able to lead happy, successful lives. I'm going to briefly summarize some of the results of the research, much of which has been done by Daniel Goleman. Take a look at both of these columns. It used to be believed that the smartest people made the best leaders, and that leadership was really a function of IQ. But with Goleman's research and some others, some surprising things occurred. Emotional intelligence is a differentiating factor between the difference of average performance and high performance. In fact, 90% of the difference between average and outstanding leaders was linked to their emotional intelligence. It's twice as important as IQ and technical expertise combined, and it's 4 times as important to overall success. A mobile workforce that is more diverse utilizes technology to communicate in the absence of face-to-face interactions requires that all members exercise high levels of emotional intelligence in order to achieve those high levels of performance. Now, as I've mentioned, national culture also influences team performance, and it's important and very useful to learn. And you can't assume that even if someone was born in the same country you were, that they share the same cultural values. National culture influences team performance. Some common challenges that are experienced by team members of different cultures are understanding accents, different meanings attached to words, differences in building trust, recognition and rewards, and the interpretation of silence. Think about what you know about the national cultures of your team members. As I said, culture matters, and the better you understand the culture of your team members, the more information you'll have to understand them. We're all individuals, so know people as individuals first, but we're also a product of our culture, and culture matters. Here's some resources that I've found that to be particularly helpful. And if you need more information about national cultures of your team, these are a couple of good ones that I've found. There probably are others, and if you know of other resources, go ahead and type those into group chat. In the meantime, let us also know whether or not how you've learned about the cultures of your team members, either through training or suggested readings, perhaps other internet websites, discussions with team members. Nicole, I see, adds that CIA.gov has good information about doing business in a country. So that's great, Nicole. Thank you. And if there are others, please continue to type those into group chat. Now, let me give you an example of how culture can lead to misunderstanding. This is a picture of me with Abdul Rahman, one of the students I had when I was in Saudi Arabia. We were in class for 8 weeks. He spoke English, and he had a very thick Arabian accent, which took me quite a while to understand. On the very last day of class, as we were saying goodbye, Abdul Rahman came up to me and said what I thought was, "Thank you, I hope I see you dead." I looked at him and I paused for a moment and I said, "Could you repeat that?" And when he did, it was then that I understood him to say, "Thank you, I hope I see you again." Never underestimate the importance of good listening. The second bridge is to represent accountability. And I see that Jackie may have a question, so Lauren, whenever it's convenient, if Jackie has that question, I'm happy to answer that.
Okay, great.
The second strategy is R, and that represents accountability. Accountability is choosing to take action to achieve results. It's making and keeping personal commitments, and it's answering for one's actions. Oftentimes, accountability can be summed up by the phrase, "I'll own it." What we find is most people want to be accountable. However, it's not that everyone perceives accountability in the same way. In fact, there is no word in Spanish that exactly translates into accountability. So we have to be more specific about what we expect of others. We've already talked about the two types of trust. DWY, SYWD represents do what you say you will do and initiate action. Communicating progress, offering assistance to other team members is a way to represent accountability. And since most team members' work occurs outside of team meetings, communication with other team members can be really important. Our next strategy is making the implicit explicit. And this is something that I referred to just a few minutes ago. When we're working virtually, there are many more opportunities for misunderstandings. And with fewer opportunities to see our fellow team members face to face, we have to leverage communications technology to accomplish our goals, information sharing, and decision making. How many of you have experienced misunderstandings when you communicate via technology? Again, I'm going to ask you, to raise your hands. Yes, indeed, it does happen. Oftentimes we know what we mean, but we fail to do so directly by not stating explicitly what we mean. And that leaves the door open to misinterpretation and misunderstandings. Let me give you a few examples. How many times have you heard someone at work say, "Please respond as soon as possible"? Spend some time on this project, but not too much time. Let me get back to you as soon as I can. You get the idea. Let me share with you a couple more reasons why being explicit about our communication is very important. We're going to ask you a question. In a moment, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is a poll. But I want you to think about this. Experts tell us that we listen effectively what percentage of the time? Let's go to that poll and see what you think. Experts tell us that we listen effectively what percentage of the time? Go ahead and make your vote.
All right, it's coming in pretty quickly. And I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, let's look at the results.
All right.
Oh, very good.
Oh, okay. So 82% of you said 25% of the time. A little over 10%, almost 12%, said 35% of the time. And almost 6% of you said 55% The correct answer is 25% of the time. Now think about that for a minute. That means that most of us are missing about 75% of what the other person is saying. In a teleconference where the temptation is to multitask is high, when that temptation is high, I would guess that it's even lower than 25%. That's why we've developed tools to support leaders and team members. Teams that have members who are not clear about how the work is done or who have unenforced norms invariably get into trouble. That's why we developed a template for the team operating agreement. A team operating agreement is a tool that describes how members communicate and work together. It's been quoted that about 70% of remote working relationships fail due to a lack of communications and unclear roles and expectations. A team operating agreement is a tool to establish clear communication protocols and work goals. Now, our fourth strategy is to develop yourself. One of the most common concerns that mobile team members have is about opportunities for development and advancement in their careers. There's this certain fear of out of sight, out of mind syndrome. Team members are concerned that they may not get the same feedback and coaching as their on-site counterparts and that they might be overlooked for promotions. That's why it's important to be proactive in developing your skills as a mobile team member. And I'm going to share with you some ways to do that. There's been some good research. Let me come back a minute here. There's been some good research about what makes for a successful mobile team member. And in addition to the development needs that I've already mentioned, here are some additional things to consider. Here are the competencies that research has identified as critical to members of high-performing global virtual teams. Self-awareness, self-management, and relationship management are related to successful team members' emotional intelligence. And depending on your role and the team, some of the other competencies may be more important than others. We offer an assessment so that you can identify your strengths and development needs as a member of your team. And that'll begin to give you some ideas for what you can do to advance your development. Then talk to your leader and create a development plan that describes how you want to build those skills. The G represents get tech savvy. As mobile team members, we rely a lot more on technology to communicate, collaborate, and accomplish our individual work tasks. So here are some key points to help you get and stay tech savvy. I don't know about all of the various forms of technology that you use to communicate and collaborate from a distance with other team members, but I'd be willing to guess they could be used to a greater advantage to share information and foster relationships. For information sharing, there are some really good tools out now for document sharing and collaboration, tracking projects, providing status reports, and productivity. So if you don't know how to use these tools, find somebody who can help you because they really make a difference. But information sharing is only part of the benefit of these tools. These tools can also be used to build team member relationships and grow trust. And let me give you a few examples. Make sure that you have pictures of all of the team members on your team webpage. For team members who are in other locations, some teams actually have members make a little video of their office and post it for other team members to see. It builds some context and gives some relationships. Use the tools offered by web conferencing technology to keep engagement during these sessions. So use polls, chats, annotation tools, and breakout rooms that are now available on most platforms. And these tools keep members engaged and they facilitate decision making. You know, the biggest reason technology isn't leveraged more is that team members and leaders don't know how to use it. So get tech savvy and your team is going to be more productive and more fun. Here's some quick tips for leveraging communication and collaboration technology. Excuse me. The last one's particularly important. Match the communication method to the message. That means using the right technology to get your point across. Sometimes that's best done with video conferencing. Other times a text message will do. The point is to think about how you can use the technology to your advantage and not add to confusion. And as one virtual team leader once told me, if you can't solve a problem in 2 emails, pick up the phone. Excuse me. Okay, here's the last strategy. The E represents engage. Leveraging technology can be especially helpful during virtual meetings, and that's one way to foster engagement, but that's only part of the solution. As mobile team members, it's a challenge to stay in touch with others. We have to be more intentional about connecting in order to maintain strong work relationships and collaborate. And since most of the work takes place outside of team meetings, it's important to keep in contact with others on the team, especially when our work is highly interdependent. In other words, when the work of one team member affects the results of another team member. It's really important to stay in line. That's why I recommend one-on-one coaching meetings with our managers. Here's a simple outline for a one-on-one coaching meeting that I use. It could look something like this. It's a discussion about what's going well, what's not going well, and what could be done better. The purpose of these meetings is to proactively identify successes and potential problems and figure out what to do about them, if anything. As mobile team members, we need to actively participate and maybe even initiate these meetings to ensure that we're on track and aligned with our goals. The coaching part of these meetings, remember, is not about solving someone else's problem for them, but it's about helping them to think and talk through how they can solve their own challenges. And this is also an outline that can be used for peer coaching that's highly effective. Virtual meetings are often viewed as a blessing and sometimes a curse. Many people hate virtual meetings, team meetings, because they're often poorly run. They're not engaging and consequently lead team members to occupy themselves by multitasking. Virtual team meetings require more preparation and more planning in order to make them focus and effective. Here's a comparison of a typical meeting with a best practice virtual meeting. Oftentimes we blame leaders for these meetings for our lack of engagement, but there are some things that we can do to make meetings more effective as members. Here's a list of my top 10 suggestions for how you can make virtual team meetings more effective. I'm not going to read all these to you, but I'm going to offer you a challenge. Read through this list and type into chat what's one thing you could do to make your team meetings more effective. And let's see what comes up. What's one thing you could do to make your virtual team meetings more effective?
Lee, I would say for me, you have mine on there, actively listen as number 5. It's so hard when you're not in front of someone to make sure that they're actually listening to you. So I know what we're doing with the games and the interaction, that really keeps everybody engaged so they don't drop off of the call or, start doing 3 other things at the same time.
Right. I see Francis offers summarize your understanding before moving on to the next topic. Shared facilitation. Elizabeth says focus. Nicole says sign on early. Jakey says know how to use the meeting technology. That's really an important one. Julie says offer to take minutes. Stuart says make sure to publish the minutes and ensure that there's understanding after the fact. Keith adds if the group is less than 9, use FaceTime. That's a great suggestion, Keith. Nicole adds to that, use video when possible. So these are things that as members of mobile and virtual teams, we can do to make virtual team meetings more effective. And that means sometimes offering to our leaders ways in which suggestions and ways in which people can participate to make virtual teams more and more effective. So thanks. These are some great suggestions. Building relationships, representing accountability, making the implicit explicit, developing yourself, getting tech savvy, engaging. These are the strategies you can apply to bridge the perceived difference. The question is now, what will you do with them to bridge your perceived distance? I'm going to offer you 3 last top suggestions, and then I'd like to go to questions. The first one is to educate yourself about the differences between on-site and virtual teams so that you can assist your leaders and members in adapting to the differences of virtual teamwork and apply some of these best practices with your team. Secondly, communicate to understand your team's purpose, your role, and the role of other team members. Apply some of these techniques we've discussed to build trust and be clear about assignments. And thirdly, develop yourself and other team members on the competencies that lead to high performance. These are a few of the tools we've created, and I've shared a little bit with you about those. We have more and can be further added to yours. So let's, at this stage, let's go on in terms of, that's the end of What's the Buzz. And Lauren, I'm going to take it and send it back to you for the moment.
All right, great job. Thank you so much, Lee. I appreciate it, and all of the insight that you always give is fantastic. So now we'd like to hear a little bit more from you who are still on the call. What did you come away with in this webinar? Is there an example, a statistic, a statement, something that made you pause and think about your own organization? So Lee and I invite you to share some of your last-minute thoughts with us in the chat field one last time. So I'm going to skip on over to the term of the day, which has actually been solved already. It was solved a little bit earlier in the presentation, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow that was going on. But Frances R., she was the first one to get the term of the day, and it is cognitive trust.
Congratulations, Frances.
Yes. Congrats, Frances. There were a few people that were in lightning fast after her, but I was like, this is why we do the chat, because I can see who came in first. So Frances was the winner this time, and you're going to receive 2 entries in our end-of-the-year drawing, so you can pick one of the Ascendis experts to do a complimentary training for you and your team of your choice. So congratulations. So for Lee, Lee's going to be doing a fantastic giveaway. So everybody that joined the call, he's going to be giving access to one of his presentations, as well as I think you were talking about one of the assessment tools. Can you explain a little bit more about that, Lee?
Yeah, the team member self-assessment looks at what are those 5 key competencies of effective virtual team membership. And it provides individuals an opportunity to assess themselves against those competencies, and you, with that then be able to identify development needs and also what your strengths are.
For sure. So I just wanted to have Lee explain what that is and share. So everybody on the call, because you registered, you are going to receive that via email tomorrow, so you can begin applying that immediately. So that's for everybody, just for participating. So also there's one other. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that Stuart adds one of the things he takes away is the need to be specific with communication. Reminded him of a Dilbert cartoon.
Oh, nice. I am a fan of those too. All right. So if you have joined our webinars before, you're used to seeing this slide where we talk about joining our website, going on to see what some of our past webinars have been, seeing our full expert listing, excuse me, and our blog articles. This time I have the pleasure of introducing to you our brand new Ascendis LMS, which stands for Learning Management System. So for over 20 years, the Drake Resource Group and Ascendis Learning Connection has been committed to leveraging the most effective technologies and training methods to engage learners from diverse backgrounds and experience levels. And this month, May 2016, we have unveiled the newest resource for online and self-paced corporate learning, which is Ascendis LMS. So if you go to this website here, management system, we're inviting your staff and your executive leadership to gain in-depth access to our global thought leaders and an expansive collection of not just their webinars, but their top presentations that were previously only available through individual consulting programs. So the LMS features 3 things. You get 90-day access to an Ascendis expert's full listing of premium content. So, for example, if you want access to all of Lee's content, you have 90 days to go through and just browse and put your team through some of his projects, some of his workshops, use some of his tools. It's just fantastic. So the areas that we have covered right now are business acumen, leadership, marketing and sales, and strategy. Okay. 2, you'll have opportunities to register for groundbreaking, either synchronous, cohort, and self-paced online sessions. So you can do things on your own, you can get together with a group within your organization, or you can do things at the same time with people all over the world. So we're really using that virtual learning tool here. And finally, you'll have access to expert instructors for guidance and support while you're going through the online course. So you won't be alone if you find yourself struggling or you need some additional assistance. The experts are available to help guide and support you through the course. And so additionally, there will be some complimentary content available to help your team decide which experts access you would like to use to move forward with your initiatives this year. So if you'd like to join the Ascendis LMS, you can visit the following website, which I'm going to leave in the chat field, and we will email you tomorrow. It is alc.ascendislms.com. So we'll send that again, and I'll put that in the chat as we go through some of the questions here. Just one last thing. Our next webinar is scheduled for July 27th, and we will email you within the next couple of weeks about our featured expert, Bill Welter, and his topic. So if you're listening to this as a recording, please join the Ascendis Masterminds for Managers group on LinkedIn to receive notification of the next webinar. Okay, so let's see. You want to go back to the Q&A here, Lee?
Sure.
Okay, let's see. All right, so Donna, thanks for joining us. She said that she joined a little bit late, but she joined in time to get logged in. Great content, and she enjoyed the graphics. Absolutely. You had some great charts there. Okay. Jackie is saying that she has a nonprofit agency. Do you know of low-cost but high-quality technology tools for communication and virtual meetings?
Well, it depends on what the needs are, and Jackie, I can be more specific with your company if you'd like. But Google Docs is great for document sharing. Also, there is Box and BoxNet, which are great if you want to share documents among team members. Sometimes in organizations there are some firewall issues, so you'd want to check that out. Join Me is a great free resource. There are some variations of that, but allow for screen sharing, and that can be passed from one team member to another. So you can share your slides, you can look at documents all online so that everybody is seeing the same information. ConferenceCall.com, or maybe it's FreeCall, offers free conference calling facilities. So that's also a nice resource if you don't have conference calling capability. There are also some other Microsoft products that are coming out, as well as Google products. So there are some good resources depending on what your particular needs are as well. Nicole adds that Microsoft 365 is terrific. Email, OneDrive for file sharing, and a full Office suite. So that's great, Nicole. Thank you. So those are a few resources that are available at low or no cost.
For sure. Let's see. See if there are any other questions here. All right, you're very welcome, Jackie. No problem. Well, I don't see any additional questions here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this edition of Ascendis Masterminds for Managers. So Lee and I would like to say thank you very much on behalf of the entire Ascendis team for your participation. And we do hope that you learned something new that you can share with your team and use it to strengthen your mobile workforce over the coming months. All right. Feel free to contact us at hello@drakeresources.com with any questions. Please feel free to try that Ascendis LMS. I just left the link in the chat field. Once again, it is alc.ascendislms.com. It's free to try the complimentary content, and then there are 2 tiers. You can use some of the trial content or the premium content. So feel free to browse and see what you're most comfortable with, and leave us feedback. Tell us what you think. If there are any other areas of business that you'd like us to add, feel free to share that. We're open to your feedback. All right. So thank you, everybody. We look forward to you previewing our LMS platform and connecting with you again in July.
Thank you very much, everyone.